Welcome to the Hard-Fought Faith. Here, you'll hear real testimonies and conversations about people who've walked the hard-fought faith, who've sat in the fire and wrestled with God. We're grateful you're sitting with us. Today's Hard-Fought Faith conversation is with Pastor Bubba and Tori and the hard-fought faith that they found in the NICU with their firstborn. Thank you both for being willing to share your story.
Absolutely.
And I'd love to start just by going way back. And Tori, if you don't mind, maybe you could start by telling me a little bit about your faith journey.
Yeah, I was born into a pastor's family. So I don't remember a time where I didn't know Jesus, love Jesus, wanted to serve him. But I do remember when I was very young, probably 7 or 8, laying in bed asking Jesus to forgive me of my sins. And then later on in my teen years, getting sanctified, just wanting to surrender my whole life to God and serve him in whatever way he wanted me to, and asking him to just purify my heart, make me like him. And so that's been my desire my entire life. I don't remember a time when I didn't love Jesus.
And what about you, Pastor Bubba? What did that look like?
So, grew up in a church family, but weren't very pure, so didn't live it out very well. But when I was 13, at a camp, God clearly spoke to me to give my life to him and to call me to preach. I knew it at that time because I had no desire whatsoever to serve before that. And that lasted probably for like 6 months. And unfortunately, just with life and the way it goes in high school, major backsliding up until being 18, graduate, trying to figure out my life at that same camp meeting and giving my heart back to God, and then being called to the Bible college I went to. So didn't have that firm base. I think it's part of why the slipping and sliding of the backsliding happened. But then, once that second time, I realized how dark my life was without him. And from that moment on, almost being 19 years old, it's been a lot more of a firm faith.
Okay.
So,
And then, so your story includes having, a child in the NICU, which means I would just like to establish, maybe you guys just telling me a little bit about how you met, how the Lord brought you guys together.
Yeah. You want me to start?
Yeah.
So I went to that Bible college, and they had asked me to travel for them during the summer to go to different camps. And at first I was like, no way, I'm ready to get out of here. Did not want to stay around for the summer. But God convicted me more and more about staying put. And I think part of that was God keeping me from going back to my old life, And the opportunity of traveling for the school actually had passed up, but they said, well, we'll use you as a janitor on campus, basically, maintenance man. And I said, you know what, that's what the Lord wants, that's fine. And then the first camp that we were going to go to was Tori's, and the people that were supposed to go couldn't make it, and so they said, Bub, will you fill in? And so it was a divine appointment. And so went up to see Tori. She was not a camper, I always like to throw that in there. Her dad was the evangelist for the youth and running the youth camp, and she was helping. And she rejected me at first, so she was playing hard.
But by the end of the week, we were,
She was playing hard to get. But yeah, by the end of the week, we had established a yearning for one another. So
we talked throughout the summer and then started dating a couple months later. And
had to date her mom and dad first to get permission.
Yes.
And they approved. So, and then
and then a year later, we got married.
Awesome. So, okay. And so we're married. We both have a foundation in the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Can you take me, what was it like those first few days after you guys found out you actually were going to have a baby?
We were so excited. Mm-hmm. So Bubba was in his senior year at Bible college, and we knew we wanted to have a big family. That was our dream, to have a big family and just have Scad's kids. And maybe like 4, maybe not Scad's, but
I wanted 9.
So we were very, very excited when we found out we were expecting in spring of 2016, and we were just looking forward to
2 young kids.
Yeah,
ourselves.
We didn't know what we were doing, but we were very, very excited for sure.
One thing I hear a lot especially now as people are having more conversations, is you really just don't expect anything to go wrong.
True.
You know, miscarriages, we're not expecting any of that. And so can you take me, like, what was it like when you started? Or was there a moment when it seemed like things weren't going right? Or what did it look like when we kind of came to the realization something isn't quite going as planned?
Yeah. It was the last couple days of July. So we found out we were pregnant in the spring of 2016. It was a very exciting time in our lives. Bubba graduated in May. We had just accepted our first pastorate. He was going to be the senior pastor of a church in Kentucky. We were very excited when we moved there, got all moved in, preparing for baby showers, all of that. And then the last couple days of July, I can't remember the exact date, but I just felt a shift. Like things were starting to kind of change. I was starting to notice some symptoms that I was a little bit worried about. And then eventually, obviously, I contacted my OB and they said, yeah, you need to come in. And they were not concerned at all at my symptoms. The first visit, which was, looking back, very shocking, but they were okay with everything. And so I went home, everything was great. And then everything just kind of imploded at once.
Yeah, we were out playing putt-putt.
Of all things,
her mom and dad and sister had come to visit.
And my brother-in-law.
And brother-in-law. And we were playing putt-putt, and she had to go to the restroom. And I remember her mom running back out, screaming, like, something's wrong. And so then it was a first ambulance ride, first hospital, transferred to another hospital, and then transferred to the final third hospital, which was the University of Kentucky.
None of the hospitals that we were taken to initially, the first two, were not equipped to handle our situation because I was 24 weeks and 5 days along, which is barely over the viability mark. And it was utterly terrifying. Yeah. It was so scary.
It was. That was a very weird. It felt like a longer. It was probably like 6 hours switching between hospital and hospital.
Probably.
And it felt like a year. Like it felt like the longest day. Because again, you're not expecting anything to go wrong. Didn't even know that was an option. Things could go wrong because it's just like, hey, we're doing everything fine, serving God, and then all of a sudden, boom, this gets thrown in, and it's like, you know, first thought was truthfully like we just lost our baby. That's what we kind of
that's what I was
initially
convinced
thought
of because I was hemorrhaging basically at the putt-putt course in their bathroom, and Bubba ended up coming into the bathroom. I just remember hugging him and being like, please don't take my baby, like saying to God, please don't take my baby. And it was confusing too because I was in no pain at all. There was no pain. And just throughout the process, we realized that I was just dilating prematurely and bleeding because of that. And so it was very confusing. There was no solid answers of what was happening. And so it was very, very much Lord, we just have to trust you right now because we don't have any idea what's going on.
Yeah, even the doctors, doctor after doctor after doctor just guessing, but I don't, not having any concrete evidence of what is happening or maybe why it's happening, just this is where we're at. And so.
But we were basically told your baby's coming tonight. It was actually our anniversary, I think, that day, right? Or maybe the next day. But we were thinking he was going to be born on our anniversary via C-section because he was breached. There was a lot going on. Yeah.
And so from that time, from first, that hemorrhaging to when did you find out that he was okay, even though he was going to be delivered? Was it just in the middle of the hospital transfers or?
Yes. Well, the last, when we got to UK hospital in Kentucky, we just weren't sure what was happening. When we got there, they were freaking out, as in they were right on top of us, obviously he's coming very soon.
Preparing for the baby to come.
Yes. Yeah. And then again, he was breached, which is an important part of the story. He was breached, going to have a C-section, all the things. So they rush us into the room, doing ultrasounds, all of that. They're like, he looks good. He is okay.
Heartbeat's there. Heart
rate is good. It's just that your body is literally dilating. I think I was a 5 at that point. Yep. Mm-hmm. And so they put me, back in where we first started, the first hospital, they had put me on magnesium, all of these different antibiotics, all of this stuff, which was miserable. It was terrible. And so they had also sent a nurse with us all the way there, thinking he could be delivered in the ambulance, which was also terrifying. But anyway, so he was okay, and they got everything stabilized miraculously. And so we were stable for 5 days in the hospital. I sat at a 5, dilated to a 5. He was okay. I was okay. I was still on all of the magnesium, penicillin, all of that. It was a very miserable hospital stay, but we were so thankful that he was doing okay.
Right.
The NICU team had come down to us and they said every day that he can stay in your womb is equivalent to 3 days in the NICU.
Wow.
Developmentally. So they're like, it is so important. Every single day is a victory. And so by the time I did have him, when I went back into labor 5 days later, he had flipped. He was not breech. I did not have to have a C-section.
Wow.
So that was very exciting for me. Like I was just thrilled for like the tiniest sliver of
you always want
something that I wanted actually happened. And so I was thankful for that.
Yeah. Because I'm guessing the early delivery wasn't on the list.
It was definitely not. They actually, they ask you all the questions. They said, do you have a car seat yet? I said, no. I said, we're lucky we have a name picked out.
We didn't have a name.
Maybe I don't remember.
We were in the hospital.
We kind of solidified what we were doing. But I haven't even had a baby shower. I have had nothing. We have nothing.
That's true. We had just plans. So
yeah.
And so those plans are interrupted. And so officially, what week of gestation was he born?
He was 25 weeks
25
and 3
weeks.
days.
And what did they say when he was born? Did they kind of warn you of what that would look like?
Yes.
Somewhat, yeah.
It was scads of people. There were probably 30 people in there when I gave birth.
And film crew.
It felt like it. There were so many people. And the NICU team was right there. And so we didn't know what it would look like, if he would have to be resuscitated when he came out. Like, we didn't know. But when he was born, he gave a cry. Like, he gave a yelp. Like, that was just the best sound in the world. I knew, okay, he's breathing. He's okay for the moment. I think we even were able to do some delayed cord clamping, which was shocking, just to have that little bit of something there. But so they whisked him away to the little side room where the NICU team took him. And then I remember one of the nurses saying, can she just see the baby for like a second? Because they were ready to whisk him away. 25 weeks is so early. He was tiny, tiny, tiny. And I just remember them bringing him over in like a little, I guess the isolette.
Yep.
And he had the tiniest little hat, and all I could see was his little nose. And that was my first glimpse of him. And then they took him away. Yeah.
And just for those listening, he was, if you want to know what a 25 week baby looks like, 1 pound, 15 ounces, 13 inches long, and I have a size 9 ring for my wedding band that would have went the full length of his leg with no problem, like up his leg. So
yeah, he was
itty bitty,
so little. And
they're usually curled up. They're not like stretched out. So that 13 inches feels more like 6 inches because they're all tucked. But
right. His skin is like transparent
kind of pinkish red.
Yeah, his little eyes were just, they weren't even open, and it was just, it was very little.
What did those first days look like? What did that involve for you guys?
Man, it's a difficult time. Like even like the hospital stay, like the Lord was there, and looking back, that's what you do, is you count on the times when God was there. From even in those swapping from hospital to hospital, in the middle hospital, the doctor and the nurse prayed with us, like held hands, like, hey, the Lord's got this. It was encouraging. The fact that our family was there was very nice. My parents ended up rushing over, and so, but it was weird. It was it's very confusing still. It was just kind of like we're holding our breath, because even though he was born and he's in the NICU, there's still so many issues that could go wrong. And I feel like the first 3 days probably like just shock, just like we're sitting by his bed in his isolette, not being able to touch him really, just watching him for hours out of the day. You were still recovering yourself.
Yeah, the hospital stay was very traumatic for me, I feel like, because there was, obviously, you're scared to death about your baby. There's a lot of unknown there. And then there's just, it's like everything that you were hoping for is not happening. You know, instead of, you're in the mother and baby wing, you hear babies all around you in the rooms, and you don't have yours with you. And I'm setting alarms to wake up during the night to pump, which was not something I planned on doing. That was a hard journey. And I remember specifically because the Ronald McDonald House ended up being where we lived for 3.5 months. And we are so thankful for RMH. Like, it was amazing. It was right next to the hospital. But I was struggling. Like, when they came in and they were talking to us about just kind of talking about the house. And I just remember when they left, I was trying not to cry. And I went into the bathroom and I just sobbed. And I was like, this is not supposed to be this way. What is happening? Like, I don't understand why we're having to go through this. And then taking trips up to the NICU, and I'm still recovering, trying to and then once we're discharged, trying to walk from the parking garage to the NICU. And it was very, very difficult and scary too, because it was just unknown. We didn't know what was. We're brand new parents. We're brand new. I didn't even know what the NICU was. I didn't know anybody who had a preemie, especially a micro preemie, which is what he was classified as. And this was all very unfamiliar territory for us.
Yeah, because in my life, a 6-pound baby was deathly ill. Oh my goodness.
Seems so little.
And then at this time, the UK hospital's changed since, but we were in a unit with 6 other babies, a very small room.
Our room was 6 babies.
Yeah, 6 unit. Yeah, and was in the the most nurses per bed kind of area. And there was a 6-pound baby that was brought in. It was that is ginormous compared to our little guy. But it was so unknown, and it was you're washing your hands when you go in and out, 15
don't
times
bring
a day.
any germs in. Don't, all of that.
There's times a day where they don't let you be in there, won't let you be in there. So you're leaving and coming and going. And like you said, you're recovering. So, and it was not, as great as the hospital is, it is a big place. It is a long walk to and from the parking garage. And so.
But also, I do remember being on cloud 9 in a way, because we had a baby, and we were trying to be so positive about it. I remember Bubba, if you know him in real life, he is a jokester and likes to try to lighten the mood, and I needed that in those moments, because he was we have a son, and he, his name's Bear, he's just a little bear, and he's so cute, and we were excited. Obviously, we're parents. This is, as hard as it is, it deserves to be celebrated, because we're parents. This is our little baby, and it's not something that we have to mourn. We can mourn certain aspects of it, but it's just such a gift, and he's doing so well in that moment. He was doing pretty, he was stable at least at the beginning. So.
Right, and I would say and I don't know if we're jumping ahead, but I think for me it was I had a moment at 6 days. So I'm pastoring. Was it the 6-day mark? Or it might have been the second week. I
think it was the second week.
The second week, so maybe around 13 days. I decide, being dumb, hey, I'm going to try to drive back and preach the morning message at the church. It was an hour and a half away. And, because everything was fine, so I got up early, took Tori to the hospital, because at nighttime we couldn't be there. Dropped her off as early as I could. I'd go down. And as I think I just showered, was kind of, be honest, in a funk. Probably shouldn't have been preaching. And the doctor called me. It wasn't Tori, it wasn't my family, it was the doctor saying, you need to come back up here because your son's about to die. That part's a little tough. But he had got sepsis. I can't say
He had sepsis and bacterial meningitis.
Yeah.
And he was, I think, 9 days old at this point.
And he was tanking. And so they had him on, oxygen turned up, breathing for him. And it was, I think up to that point, I had just kind of had it in my head that he wasn't going to make it. I was probably joking a lot, but I hadn't had firm belief that he would make it through. And as I'm driving back, because obviously I'm trying to drive back, that was a moment of me, yelling at God, hey, why are you doing this? We're young, we're trying to obey you. I'm at this church that you've called us to. And honestly, coming to a point which is a very tough place to be, but an honesty of accepting that, Lord, if you do take him, like, this is your life. I have given my life to you. Tori's given my life to you. We have, in essence, dedicated this baby to you. If it's your will for him to die, then I have to be okay with that. And I say okay with that. That's probably not the best way to say it, but a realization of, like, it's in your hands. It's not in my hands. And I will, in choosing, saying a choice of, like, God, I will serve you no matter what, and actually being honest about that. That was a long, I'd say hour and a half. I think I was booking. I don't think it took me an hour and a half to get back. But when we get back, we have been putting it out there for everybody to pray. And I think when we got this news, I think I called a couple people, and, like, it got sent out through Facebook, and churches were praying. And I joked that unless there was, like, a Chinese prince that was dying, I don't think anybody was praying more for than him at that moment. And he did a miraculous recovery, like, literally a miracle where the doctor said, I don't know who your God is, but he listens when you pray, because he should have died. So that was a turning point for me. That was where I was like, okay, I think he'll survive. I think this will be fine. But again, that honest acknowledgement with God of, like, even if he doesn't, I will choose to serve you anyways, which was a tough place to be.
And before you knew the outcome.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. Tori, what was that like for you, since you were also kind of alone when you...
Yeah, he had dropped me off, and I went inside to the NICU, walked in, washed my hands and everything. And as I was walking through the hallway, our nursery was at the end of the hallway. And I saw the nurse practitioner, the doctor, turn and look at me. And he said, "Are you alone?" And I said, "Yes." And they're like, okay. I don't remember what they said in that moment, but I went in, and it was obvious something was very wrong. They came in and talked to me, explained to me what he had, and they just said, there's nothing else we can do. Mm-hmm. Like, we have literally done everything we can do. Again, he's septic, bacterial meningitis, and we have no idea what the long-term complications will be if he does survive this. And so I was a wreck. I went into the pumping room, and I was calling Bubba. I don't think that they had called him, and I was just like, you have to come back right now. And I just sat by his isolette, and the nurse went and found me tissues because they didn't have any handy, and I just sat there and stared at him because we couldn't hold him at that point. But I think it was that night or maybe the next day that they did allow us to pick him up, because I think looking back, it was because they didn't know if he would make it. Mm-hmm. But we had our hands in there, and we were able to pick him up, and he was so light, and it was terrifying because he had a million wires and oxygen prods and tubes, and the feeding tube, and there was just
his skin seemed so fragile. He seemed so fragile. It was like a fear of touching him almost. But
we gave him a bath. It was a sponge bath that night, and again, absolutely terrifying. But it was special in that moment because we didn't know what was going to happen. So, that was
mm-hmm.
yeah.
And how long did that end up resolving, or were there layers?
A lot of layers. So that, I think the sickness part kind of, again, they, in their own terms, miraculous healing. Because he was on the, what do they call it when the oxygen vibrates and everything, and trying to keep his lungs open. They're doing all that, basically cranked up to 100, and it's we can't do anything more. Well, then slowly that started to wean off, and okay, so he's breathing more on his own. Always, the whole time we were there, it was always watching the oxygen sensors. And if anyone has a micro premier and has dealt with this, they know what I'm talking about. The constant beepings of stats are too low, and you want to revive them. Kind of stir him up a little bit. But then it was other things. So he had brain bleeds. He had a constant issue with kind of, later with feeding, with his heart dropping. And then towards the end of our time there, so it was 109 days that we were in the NICU. And towards the end of that time, he had to have a heart surgery that they actually transferred him up to Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And that made a world of difference. I feel after that moment is when they closed up that hole in his heart, that he was able to actually eat and not almost pass out at the same time because it was just like too much for him. So, but I feel like the brain bleeds, they were always talking about that. There was always constantly a doctor coming in and explaining like, hey, we've made it to, 2 weeks. That's really good. Here's the other complication we might have. Here, we made it to 4 weeks. Here's a complication we had. And constant.
There was a lot of watching and waiting.
It was.
Like we didn't know if things, like the infection did resolve within a week or two. I think he was on antibiotics and everything. But then again, it's like, okay, we did a scan and yes, he has these, I think it was stage 3 brain bleeds. Mm-hmm. We don't know what that looks like. We don't know if they'll resolve. We don't know if this will cause long-term complications for him. So the whole, and the same with, when they would do an eye exam or he has bleeding in his lungs. We don't know if he'll, be asthmatic. Like all of these different things, we don't know what the long-term things are. But it felt like every time you go in, there was something else. Like he was stable, stable, yeah. but there was always something new, it felt like. Mm-hmm. And so always new levels of trust, like, oh, okay, here's something else, God, that we don't know what's going to happen.
It really was it is everything for like any function of a body. It's like, hey, we're not sure how this is going to heal itself, or like if it'll be normal, is this going to be a lasting thing. And they would talk a lot about it. It's funny, he's 9 years old now. I don't know. Spoiler alert, he's it's a good thing. But it's like they would say you'll notice when he gets to be 9, 10 years old. And it's like, okay, so you'll know lasting effects, but it really is one of those things that we're just guessing. We're telling you what the issues are, but we don't know really what the lasting effect is going to be of that. So very unique time. And a lot of nurses, a lot of blessing, like nurses up there that were blessings to us.
They were wonderful.
They were good.
Absolutely great. And we knew that where we were very blessed with the hospital that we ended up with, because their trauma level was like top tier. They were equipped to handle all of that. So we felt very confident and comfortable that, God has put us right here where we need to be. And we were very, very grateful for that.
Because if we would have moved back to either one of our homes after college, neither one of those places had hospitals that would have been ready to do this. So, I really do think that was part of the blessing, was being close enough to where, and again, as he got further away from birth, like I would drive back on a Sunday and preach, and I would slip down on Wednesdays sometimes to lead Bible study or to visit with some of our shut-ins. And I was able to do that because we were so close. I could go do that and then come back and still have the Ronald McDonald House there for us to stay at. So that was a blessing.
And in those days, like where you kind of get out of one moment and then you drop into the next kind of crisis, how did you guys grapple with the Lord? Like you said, it added layers to trust, but did you have any moments where you're kind of like, okay, God, could we stop? Or, what did that look like for you guys?
I think for me, I had to rely very heavily on the prayers of other people in that moment, because I was, how sometimes when you pray and it feels like they're just bouncing back, and you're just in you're like in the thick of it, and it's hard to see beyond what's happening in that moment. And I think in a very like broad sense, I had peace. I had a lot of peace knowing like, okay, like my brain knew God is going to take care of this. He has us. He has him. He loves Bear more than I do, which is hard to fathom, but I can trust him. And then my humanity would kick in and I'm like, okay, but God, this hurts and this is so hard and I'm exhausted. Like, we were there for 3.5 months. It was so exhausting, but we had so many people who were praying for us. Hundreds of people. I still have people come up to me and say, I prayed for your son 9 years ago. And I just think that's so cool. Like we had such a great group of people we didn't even know. And I had to really rely on that. And then also just, sometimes you can only just say the name of Jesus. Yes. And I would pump by myself in the pumping rooms that they had. And that was kind of my time to, I would sit in there for 30 minutes just decompressing. And that sometimes is all I could pray. It was just, Jesus, I need you to help me. Or, I don't know how it was for you.
No, and that was really the biggest thing, was having such a supporting cast behind us. I don't know if cast the right way, but it was a wide net of people there, sending encouragement, sending, sometimes just gift cards. Like, to be honest, like, that was very, very helpful.
It was very
cash sometimes, like, and we had lived by faith. Like, I had through college, even before I met Tori, like, just sold out on, Lord, you want me to be here? I couldn't afford college without him. And he just provided a way every time. So we kind of took that mentality, I think, into that and started saying, all right, God, like, you've taken care of us up to this point, so we're going to keep holding on because we don't have any other options. And that truly is where we were at. Like, there was nothing else we could do anyways, but we just had sold out to that. And after that moment I had of driving back and, saying, all right, Lord, like, I will serve you regardless kind of thing. Like, he used us to be encouraging to people around as well, because as we were in our room of 6, we stayed there the entire time, which is unheard of. Everyone else
Same
moved.
spot.
I know, back in the corner, the furthest point and the back corner that you could be, that was us. And yet we had people coming and going around us that we were able to, I think, empathize with in a way that other people weren't going to be able to. And that led me to be able to lead one man to Jesus, like, as he's coming out of the restroom, saying, just came up to me and started talking like he knew me, like, well, this has been the worst day of my life, I'm going through this. And being able to say, hey, I do know what you're going through, because we're in it as well. And being able to be like, all right, look, God has me, he can have you too, kind of thing. But it really was, our backs were leaning against God, saying, hey, look, if you don't sustain us, then we're going to fall. And
he gave us, like, fresh grace every day. And his grace was sufficient, because every single day, if I tried to just rely on the strength that he gave on day 1 as compared to day 75, that would not have worked. But he, every day, just spoke to us in new ways, gave us new strength, which was so needed, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What was it like going home with your son?
Oh, yeah. Just nervous.
So scary. Well, before we left, they put us in a room and, went through all of this education about, everything. Keep him away from people. They were basically saying, if he catches a cold, he could die, which was terrifying to hear.
Because his lungs were still, like, his lungs were a major issue. We didn't even talk about that. His lungs were a major issue the entire time.
Yes.
Because is it at 28 weeks when they fully develop usually?
It's much later than he was born. Yeah.
And so, like, because that was our original prayer, was like, let us get past 28 weeks, because they say that's a major benchmark. And so he had a lot of issues, difficulty breathing. And part of when they were sending us home was he was still going on oxygen with all these sensors. Yeah. So we weren't completely cut loose. It was just, you can do this at your house. Still once a week we were driving to Lexington for all these checkups and doctor's appointments, sometimes twice a week. But, that was a lot of, like, here's all this medical equipment and training quickly on how to use it, and just kind of like, again, we're two young kids.
We didn't really know.
We were.
But also, we had learned a lot while we were in the NICU, and I mean, it feels like you weren't a nurse, but you learn all of the lingo and stuff, and so, but we were very excited, of course, to go home. We were thrilled. I remember the date they had told us, okay, he's going to do a car seat test. He had to do a car seat test before he left, which they would keep him in there for, I can't remember, like maybe an hour, and see how he did, if his oxygen dropped.
It was the length of our drive home.
Okay.
So it was like about an hour and a half.
Yeah. And so they said there's a good chance he'll come home this week. And we were so excited, scared to death too. Went home. I mean, I cleaned our house so well. I wanted no germs, no nothing, and got his nursery ready, which ended up not really being necessary, because when we went home, we basically made the living room our bedroom. And so we were sleeping on the couch. He was sleeping in there because he had this gigantic oxygen tank that was complicated to move all around. And life looked very different when we got home, because he and I basically lived in isolation for maybe even maybe not a year, 10 months, probably 9 or 10 months. And it was it was a lot. I was very scared of him getting sick. That was something I really had to work through. I would have practically panic attacks thinking about him getting sick. I was so anxious about that. And I did not want him around anybody, which was their recommendation. Don't take him out. Especially when we went home, it was November. And so, it was right during RSV season, all of that. And they said, do not take him around people.
Which was hard because, like, the church had been so gracious and loving to us. Yeah. And so, like, to be honest, without that church, I don't know how that would have looked either. Like, they were the cornerstone.
Funny. I mean, we had only been there for 2 months when all of this, less than 2 months when all of this happened. Yep. And we're just like, so sorry, we're going to live an hour and a half away for 3 months.
And they were like, put your child first. They were,
they were so gracious.
But they were so, and rightfully so, they were so ready to meet that little child when he came home. So, like, we've been investing and praying in him. Like, we're ready. And to be like, I know, like,
I'm so sorry.
It's going to take some time.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you went to your first service with them.
It might have been in the summertime, maybe that next summer.
Almost a year, yeah.
Yeah, so he was almost a year old, at that point. So it was a very different, I mean, on the one hand, I enjoyed all the snuggles, of course, and, like, being a homebody naturally, I didn't necessarily mind some of that, but also it's just not what you dream of. You expect to come home and people get to come see the baby and they hold the baby and, just you take them out for their first Easter. We were home. We didn't go for Easter, he and I. And Christmas looked very different. And it was an adjustment for sure.
That's a good way to say it. It was the adjustment of expectations.
Yes.
But at the same time, I think our expectations had changed to where we were just happy he was alive.
Yes,
and so,
that's so true.
Yeah, we were very just, let us breathe while we're here. And he was on oxygen, about 6 months afterwards?
Something like that.
About
it was a
year.
while, yeah.
And getting so used to the, again, like the beeps constantly going off and the checking and the PT, our physical therapist coming over, trying to work with them. And just like, here's all your routine. And then when he finally got off oxygen, it was like, still holding our breath, like, is he okay? Is he gonna be? Because that always felt like that was there just in case. And became light sleepers, I think.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
Also can sleep anywhere.
When did you guys kind of enter to a place where you felt a little bit more calm? Like, how long did it take before you were sort of not waiting for the next thing to happen? Or how long did it take your bodies to kind of stop you living that panic or trauma response?
Pretty close to that year. For me, about that year, the first year birthday. Maybe a little bit before that. Like, even when because I think it was about 10 months of his birth, we took him out to church for the first time. And there was still like a little, like, we're holding our breath. But I think when he had his first birthday and was sitting in his high chair trying to mess with his cake that he was not a fan of. He wasn't one to be messy, and he wasn't one to like the texture of like
sensory things that bothered him. Yeah.
And but like, having family over for that and actually celebrating, like, okay,
that's true. That was a big party. We had a lot of people over, and that felt like a good milestone.
That was a huge one for me. But
I think it took a number of years for certain things to calm down for me. My anxiety for germs, I was never a germaphobe before I had him at all, and I became a major germaphobe. And I remember sometimes thinking, okay, we would take him somewhere and I would find out somebody was sick, and I would pray, like, Lord, please don't let him get sick, please don't let him get sick, because I was so terrified of that. And then just different triggers, things that would come up that would really trigger me. Like when he was, I think, 4, I found a box of maternity clothes, and I couldn't breathe. I was crying. I was so stressed about it, and it really just brought up all of, like, I hardly even got to wear these. It was just it seems like such a minor thing, but just little things like that could really set off a trigger for me. But overall, I think once he got off oxygen and stuff, I think like we were able to enjoy him very much. Mm-hmm. I was not living, I feel like I lucked out a lot, to be honest with you, but I don't feel like I was living in perpetual fear. I was overall, I mean, just so thankful that he was well and he was here, and we were celebrating every single milestone because they were huge. It's like, oh, by the time when he started, eventually, it took a while because there were so many developmental delays, but when he started crawling or eventually walking or, saying, trying to babble something, I mean, that just felt like so huge because we didn't know, again, what those things would look like for him.
And it helps so much, like, being there. As a first-time parent, I actually, like, almost wish everybody could have this same peace. We'd never compared him to anyone else because we just knew, like, oh, he's on his own timetable. Well, that's every child. Yes. And I wish more parents could get that of, like, it's okay that they're not doing what little Susie down the street's doing. And so we really did. We honestly, everything was a milestone that we celebrated because, hey, this is a great thing that he's done that he wasn't doing before. But it was, every birthday I feel like was always like,
we've always done his big birthdays up pretty big. And I feel like every year I'm just like, you did it, man. You made it to
it's an altar
4 and 5 and he's almost 10. And it's so crazy to me.
So.
And through, we're sitting here, we have that ability to look back and like celebrate those. But when you kind of, if you bring yourself back a couple years, what makes you, and I'm just thinking for the person who's in your situation, what makes you, why did you trust the Lord when there were so many unknowns? And you kind of have said this, but I want to ask you directly, like, why did you trust God when you had to watch these things happen to your child or walk that unknown?
So I think part of it, and I don't think that I didn't realize this till later, but I think you have to come to a point to where, like, I was so convinced of who God was and who He is. What other choice did I have? Like, we were at the point where it's either, God, we're going to trust in you or we're going to reject you. There's no in between. There's no walking the fence. And I think most of our lives are lived that way, where we have this, life is so easy that we can say we're trusting God, but we're really not because we don't have to. That got us to the point where it was trust Him or reject Him, and there's no in between. And we chose to trust Him. And, part of it, I don't even think I could choose to reject Him because I know who God is. I know how He really is. I'm convinced through my person that He is the God of the universe who sustains us. And to choose to reject Him is just such a foreign thought, but that's where we got to, is that point of saying, what other choice do I have? And that sounds sad on one point, but at the same time, like, that's the most freeing place to be. It's just the reality of it. It's like, man, I know you are who you say you are.
We can go through this trial with Him or without Him, because the trial's happening one way or the other. And going through it with Him is so much, you have so much more peace and you have hope. And
you have a crutch. And like people get, say God's a crutch. I'm like, yeah, it's 2 crutches and a wheelchair for me. Like, I need that. Like, we were 100% laid on Him. Like, we're exhausted.
We had
we're tired.
Nothing more to give.
In physically being able to do nothing for our child. It's just like, man, God, this isn't your hands. He is your child. Before He was ours, He was yours. Like, you've given Him to us. But like that idea of you really do love Him. Mm-hmm. I believe that. And so you really love us as well. We're going to just trust in you fully because that's the only option that there is. Again, besides rejecting Him.
Right.
But
is there anything that you would have wanted to hear in those days that you would want to encourage somebody who maybe is in that situation now, or anything you wish you would have known, just anything, advice, whatever you've got for maybe somebody who is in the NICU right now with their child?
A lot of things come to mind. I don't know about with you, but I will say this. It is most natural and human when someone is going through the most difficult time of their life, which we are, to try to relate to them and share a difficult thought. Don't do that. You don't need to. It's not helpful. In fact, sometimes it's infuriating to hear, we had to stay in the hospital for a week with our child because, their toe was weird or something. I don't know. People would try to relate, and I think they mean well, but what you're going through, if you're going through this, it is still going to be unique. It is your own situation, your own story. No one is going to fully be able to relate to that. But there's people out there that want to love you, I think, still through that. And when they do share those things, like, don't get mad. Know that it's coming from a heart of they're trying to be empathetic to the best of their abilities. Were you going to add something?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, like, allowing yourself to grieve the hard things.
Absolutely.
All of the hard things. The fact that your child is sick. The fact that you don't know the unknown. Then there's the small things that it's okay to grieve an experience that was lost. It's okay to grieve expectations that were not met. That is okay. And I think sometimes certain, people can be like, well, just rally, just pull yourself up. And that is not who God is. I do not believe that God is just like, come on, you got it. Like, you got to just trust me and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, but it's okay to sit in the grief and it's okay to sit in the ashes. I had a friend who had gone through almost a very similar story as to what we went through. And she was so helpful for me during that time. But she would say that. She said, it's okay to sit in the ashes and for someone else to just sit there with you. If you know somebody who's going through something difficult like this, like Bubba said, you don't have to just always try to be relatable. You don't have to have the perfect scripture even or the perfect encouragement. It's sometimes just sitting with someone when they're going through something hard and just giving them a hug or not trying to fix it all the time.
Right.
I think I just love that phrase, like sitting in the ashes with someone, the ashes of a dream, the ashes of anything that they are going through. I just think that can sometimes be the most helpful thing.
That's a phenomenal picture. So to close out, I would just love, and you don't have to go into great detail, but what does life look like today? What does faith look like today? What does having your son look like today?
Sure. So since that time and going forward, there's still hard things that we've gone through.
Yes.
And it's sometimes like you'll catch yourself not wanting to trust God still. Like, be real about it. Yeah. Don't lie. And then you'll think back and be like, all right, God, you did, greater things for us. This is something that's, so much smaller. A lot of things are not life or death. That was life and death with our son.
Yeah.
This is, we're struggling through whatever. It's not life or death. But still recounting. I think it's so important to praise God when things are difficult and to literally list out, all right, Lord, you were with us in the NICU. You were with us when we got that news that, he was going to die. You were with us when, his eyes had to be checked because they thought, he was going to go blind or, all these things. You were with us then and are going to take that going forward knowing that you're still going to be with us. Doesn't mean we're going to get the outcome we want. And that's where I think it's difficult sometimes is, we want the outcome, but when you get to the point where you're just, I'm okay with his presence going with me regardless. And, I think it is a testimony. Our son's life is a testimony to other people, but also to ourselves of God's goodness, his grace and mercy. There's a lot of grace. And again, I think as Tori was saying, there's a need for that grace for yourself. Like, what's you're going through can still be wrong or hurtful, and that's okay to accept, like, this is not what I want. But he's gracious through that. Mm-hmm. He allows for, he's a big God. He can take it. He's not put off by it. And so I think we do look back and we count and say, all right, you did that then. I think you're going to do this. I'm still a little upset about it, Lord. And just talking through that to him and being honest about it.
Yeah. I think life now, I over the years have had to have so many levels of surrender to God with this and with other things. And it's been really beautiful. It's been hard, surrendering the size of our family, surrendering just so many things that have to do with this. But I think it's like, if I can look back on God's track record, if you will, like he has been faithful to me in the past. I can't doubt him now. Like if he was, because we've been through a lot now in the past, almost 13 years that we've been married. And it's like, I can look back on those things and think, okay, God, you were there. You helped me I have something to look back on. And I think that's very powerful. And then now with Bear, it is so cool because we tell him about his story.
Yep.
And I love telling him that story. And he will say, God healed me. And I get to tell him about the people who prayed for him and how their prayer lives were strengthened and how people got, some people came to know the Lord through it. And, God healed you. I get to tell him that. And
right.
he is just amazed by that. And I just love seeing it on his face when it just starts to register like, oh, like
he gets it.
God did miraculous things in my life. And so that's one of my favorite things now. So
I don't know if this is a good closer on it.
Please.
It's a little poem that I learned in college, and I don't know the author. It says unknown. But it talks about feeling faith and fact, and it is really short. But it says 3 men were walking on a wall, feeling faith and fact, when feeling got an awful fall, and faith was taken back. So close to faith to feeling. So close was faith to feeling. He stumbled and fell too, but fact remained and pulled faith back, and faith brought feeling too. And I think there's always that. Sometimes when you're going through something thick and heavy, your feeling wants to get you off track, and your faith can want to falter with that as well, and rightfully so. But the fact remains, God is still King of Kings,
yes.
Lord of Lords. He's still in control, and it's that fact of we know what He did again in the past, that He'll do that again, and that fact is what our faith really has to be built on, of knowing God is who He says He is. He doesn't leave us. He doesn't forsake us. He's with us day in and day out. And if we are, again, living that life, our feelings sometimes are going to go astray, and sometimes our faith might linger a little bit one way or the other, but that fact remains that He is who He says He is. And if we tie to that, it really does. You get to that point where, again, what other option do I have?
Yeah.
Because the fact is He is God, and I want to serve Him.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you both so much for sharing your story and that honesty and what it looks like to have a hard-fought faith. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Yep, enjoyed it.